Hello, welcome back to OmniFit TV. This is Jerome Stormer speaking. And today's video is a case for Eden Hazard. Now, it pains me more than most fans to say that Hazard's career seems to have fallen apart completely. And I say this as a Chelsea fan, bearing in mind that he was one of the players I had personally listed. You know when you usually have these players in mind, right? When they're young and you can see potential in them and you just love the way they play and you support a certain club. You always think that there are a certain number of players, maybe a small list of sorts. I had that personally growing up, where you just want these players to come to the club and play. Mata was on my list. Saul Niguez was actually on my list on a more recent note, but that's another story. Hazard was on my list very early. Raul Meireles was on my list, and like these are just a couple of examples so I can give you guys context for this whole thing. Hazard to me presented himself at Lille as a player who could take over from the mold or take over the mold that Gianfranco Zola had left at Chelsea. The kind of player Zola was, I had always wanted a player like that at the club. Someone who had the potential to be like that and even better. And Hazard was the answer. My problem with him, however, and it's always been the same problem, his fitness and his lack of discipline. And you obviously have to add the fact that he wasn't really protected in terms of injuries, was kicked all around for fun. Mourinho did say something about that, and he said, in a few years we may not have Eden Hazard. I'm sure injuries played a huge role in his downfall, especially at Madrid, because the weird part was he was far more fragile in Spain than he was in England, although the game in England is much more physical. Hazard's first season in the Premier League involved him being kicked around a ton, and I have core memories of that happening. It's just, even with that, even bearing that in mind, you look at his record in Madrid, and I go to Madrid especially because his time at Chelsea was legendary. There's no dispute, there is no debate. He did everything a player could have done in London for us. But at the same time, I always felt he could do more. I always felt he had more potential. It seemed as though whatever his situation was, however he was taking care of himself or however he wasn't taking care of himself, he was getting away with fulfilling that potential on the pitch. So you obviously have no complaints, right? Then he went to Madrid. And that's where everything fell apart completely. Overweight in his first preseason, struggling for fitness like throughout every single season he was there at the club, injuries plaguing him left, right, and center, his mentality dipping, struggling, the depression, the lack of confidence, but because apparently he's debating retiring. It seems as though he feels that he can't continue. I look at that and I think to myself that usually, from what I have seen as my time as a fan, players with an immense amount of talent seem to somewhat take it for granted and not use the discipline that they should have to fuel it and take better care of themselves. I think this presents itself as the same case with Eden Hazard. It presented itself in the same case, to me at least, with Ronaldinho. Hazard is still only 22 years of age, 32 years of age, excuse me. Meaning, he could easily have 4 or 5 more years left in him. And he could play those at the top level. I feel as though his career overall, from being the starlet at Lille, doing such a good job in France, and doing amazing things for Chelsea in England, and supposedly going to Madrid where his career should have peaked because that was his dream. Hazard had always dreamed of playing for Madrid, and he had flirted with the idea while he was at Chelsea throughout the last couple of years with the Blues. And I think personally that if you're not disciplined, if you don't necessarily take care of yourself as well as you should, it's going to catch up to you one way or another. There's no denying that. It's it's a domino effect. You cause that domino effect. You play a huge role in where it takes you, right? Especially as an athlete. That's why there are players a who take a meticulously detailed level of care of themselves in regards to their diets, their workout regimens. You look at Lewandowski, for example. He's one of the best examples I can give you. He does not. I can't remember the last time he got injured. And then you look at Hazard, and Lewandowski has been at the top of the level, at the top of his game, and playing at the top level for year after year after year after year, be it in Germany or currently in Spain. It leaves you speechless, truly, that a player of such a caliber, who, by the way, who's like we may never see again as well, because Hazard to me he's not only Belgium's best ever player, but he is the kind of player who, when you watch him with the ball, it's as if he's levitating. You can't get the ball off of him. And the way he moves actually does remind me of Zidane a little, because his idol. If you watched video comparisons of both, you get what I mean. And if you haven't, I'd encourage that. So seeing him possibly think to contemplate retiring at the age of 32, after, honestly, like, on paper, he's had a brilliant career. On paper, he has had possibly the career he wanted to have. Maybe not in a way or in the way that he had wanted it, because if you ask me, I think he would have preferred the level of fulfillment he had at Chelsea to present itself to him at Madrid, even if he didn't win as many trophies as he won. It feels as though his cabinet, in terms of his time at Madrid, is hollow. He wasn't that involved. He wasn't himself. He wasn't Eden Hazard. He was a fringe player, someone who barely took part in what was happening, and yet he'd walk out onto the pitch, hold the trophy, take the medal home, and, say his piece. That doesn't work for every footballer. And I doubt it would work for a footballer of his caliber and of his strength. Because Hazard was a strong player. He wasn't the player who currently lacked the confidence that he had before. And I think that this will only present itself as a turning point for two options. This is a fork in the road. This is possibly the first fork in the road he's ever had in his career. Either he does choose to retire, close the book entirely, and move on to better things for him, or he could use the opportunity, to better himself, figure out everything that went wrong, how to really climb back up onto the mountain so he can get back to that mountaintop he was on, because I don't think he was that far off. I think Hazard has very little to go to actually get back to where he was. It may sound a little crazy, but he's that gifted. He just needs the patience and the discipline and a shift in the methodology through which he does things. Maybe he didn't find that at Madrid. Maybe he'll find it somewhere else. And maybe then we'll see the Eden Hazard we grew up with, the Eden Hazard that we loved. But we will have to wait and see what happens. And, that's what I have to say for this video. If you agree with what I've said or disagreed, just, comment section below, open for discourse. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thank you once again for watching, and I will see you once again next time the whistle blows.